In this video, we're going to see how well English speakers can read French without having ever studied it before. After my recent video about how well Japanese speakers can read Chinese, lots of people in the comments said that it seemed similar to an English speaker trying to read French. Just like a large amount of Japanese vocabulary was inherited from Chinese, a large amount of English vocabulary was inherited from French. Almost half according to some estimates, but at least around 30%. They're usually pronounced quite differently from the French word, but look the same or similar in writing. For example, English nation versus French nation. English hospital versus French hôpital. English difference versus French différence. This is in large part because of the Norman conquest of England in 1066, which led to several centuries of Norman French being spoken as the prestige language, alongside English, which was spoken by the common people. The transition from Old English to Middle English took place during this time, with a tremendous amount of influence from Norman French, and later on from Parisian French when it became the standard. English also has a significant amount of vocabulary from Latin, some of which resembles French vocabulary because French developed from Latin. Words from French and Latin together make up around 60% of English vocabulary. But it's worth pointing out that common everyday vocabulary in English has more native Germanic words and fewer French and Latin words than formal or academic English does. You can see this in the fact that English often has one word of Germanic origin for informal use and a synonym of French or Latin origin for formal use. For example, the word ask is Germanic, while request comes from French. The word live is Germanic, while reside comes from French. The word start is Germanic, while the word commence comes from French, and so on. So let's see how well English speakers can understand both informal sentences and formal sentences in written French. The results might be different. I'll be specifically talking to English speakers with as little exposure to French or other Romance languages as possible. Let's start with an informal sentence that's not so difficult. Okay, so here's the first sentence. Elle prépare le dîner. So what might this mean?
So I'm guessing prepare, or that sounds a lot like the English prepare. The last bit, I'm guessing dinner. So I think maybe like they prepare the dinner or she or something like that. I'm not sure like the pronoun, but I think someone prepares the dinner.
Right, so it means she's making dinner or she's preparing dinner. But I wrote making because that's like a more natural way to say it, I guess. Word for word, the sentence is she prepares the dinner. The only word that caused some confusion was the pronoun elle. What do you think this means, or can you guess?
I've got a guess. I'm not sure what that elle is, but my inclination is this about preparing dinner, the dinner, perhaps.
What do you think this means, or what could this mean?
Elle prepared the dinner.
Okay, yeah. Elle prepared the dinner. So Elle is a woman's name?
This person, yeah.
Okay, right, that's a good guess. So here's what it means. She's making dinner, or she's preparing dinner. But not all sentences are quite that clear. C'est une longue histoire.
Okay, so the first word, I'm not too sure, but I'm guessing a long history or like a long story or something like that. And maybe like it is, or like it has a long story.
Okay, yeah, I think you're on the right track. That's a long story, or it's a long story. Word for word, it's that or this is a long story. But this word also means history. It depends on the context. C'est une longue histoire.
I'm going to say a long history. I don't know. I know that start bit is like some basic piece because you hear it all over the show.
So for the ending, you said long history?
Long history seems like the obvious first guess.
Okay, that's a long story, or it's a long story. Histoire can be history, but it's also story. C'est une longue histoire.
So long, I see long and history. So something a long history, like this has a long history maybe.
Okay, so here's the sentence. That's a long story. There's often just one main word that stands out as familiar while the others are unclear. Okay, so here's another sentence. Nous avons une réunion à 2 heures.
So I'm guessing that the one word is reunion. So maybe like some people are meeting for a reunion or something like that.
Okay, so meeting for a reunion.
Or they're like getting for like a get together.
Right, so that's a good guess. So here's the full meaning. We have a meeting at 2 o'clock. Word for word, it's we have a meeting at 2 hours. Obviously, réunion is the source of the English word reunion. But the English word is more specific and emphasizes that you're meeting someone again after a long time apart. So, réunion sounds like reunion, like a school reunion or something, or like meeting, getting back together. But really, it just means a meeting. Okay, so here's another one.
So I recognize reunion as either reunion, as in like the English word reunion, or a place.
You mean like the island? It's an island. It's part of France, but it's an island near Africa, I think.
Yeah, but maybe that would be capitalized. I'm not sure if they would spell it like that. I see un and is that do? It's like D-U-X, D-E-U-X. Like 1 and 10? Oh, do is 2.
Right. Right, so here's the meaning. We have a meeting at 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. Yeah.
So,
I guess reunion is close enough.
Okay, I see reunion. I see maybe hour, as in hour time. Maybe it could be 1. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, maybe given context, I could figure out what it means.
Right, so I'll give you the meaning first.
Right.
We have a meeting at 2 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Okay, another one. J'ai du mal à comprendre.
This one makes some sense because I think maybe it's similar to Spanish, like comprender, or like to understand, maybe. So it's maybe saying, I understand, or I get what you're saying. Okay,
right. So you got that key word, comprendre, which means like to understand. So the meaning of the whole sentence is like this. I'm having trouble understanding. Word for word, it's I have some trouble to understand. Every participant was able to make sense of this word, comprendre, but not much else.
Well, that word looks like someone might make up if they are pretending to speak French.
The last word? Okay.
Yeah, it's like it's comprehend or understand, I guess. And then I see that je again. I'm going to say it's probably I. So I'm saying something about myself.
Well, obviously I see comprendre, which I guess has the same root as like comprehend. So yeah, that's about it. Okay, so I'll show you the meaning. I'm having trouble understanding. Yeah, so real. This word, mal, is also present in English as the prefix mal. You might hear this in some English words like malpractice. Yeah, means like something is mistaken or there's a problem with it. Malpractice, malfunction, malnutrition, etc. Sometimes even the one word I expected to be familiar wasn't so clear. Il pleut beaucoup aujourd'hui. This one's a little more tricky. I think the only one that stands out to me is like merci beaucoup, so the middle word. But other than that, I'm having a hard time understanding. I'm not getting a whole lot out of it. Okay, right. So I expected that, so don't worry. So the sentence means it's raining a lot today. Okay. Word for word, it is raining a lot today. I thought this word beaucoup would be universally known, but I was wrong about that.
Beaucoup, what is that?
Beaucoup is a lot. So that's one word I thought a lot of native speakers of English might know, just from culture and movies and stuff. They might know beaucoup means a lot.
I recognize it. I think like I've definitely heard that. It's like because like what does it actually mean?
Right. Honestly, I have no idea. I mean, I recognize beaucoup. I think merci beaucoup is like thank you, right? But other than that, I'm drawing a blank. So this translates to it's raining a lot today. Oh, okay. So beaucoup is like a lot. So you said you've heard merci beaucoup, which means like thanks a lot or thank you very much. Okay, this one. Je crois que tu as raison. Yeah, this one's a little trickier. I'm not understanding a lot. I'm guessing that the last word isn't like raisin or anything like similar in English. So maybe like a food of some sort. I'm not sure. So here's what it means. It means I think you're right. Okay. Word for word, it's I believe that you have reason. Raison is related to the English word reason.
Oh, that last word looks a lot like reason.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that to is like a U. Of course, as is spelled exactly like as. So I don't know.
But let's see the sentence. It's, I think you're right.
Oh.
The last word is a cognate of reason in English, raison and reason, but it's used here like correct thinking or something like that. Like you have correctness, correct thinking. But you could think of it as like you have reason, like you have reasonable thinking or something like that, right? Okay, we've seen what it's like for an English speaker to try to read some everyday French sentences, but how about some more formal sentences? Le gouvernement annonce une série de réformes économiques pour stimuler la croissance.
So the first two words, so the government announces a series of economic reforms to stimulate the economy or something like that. I'm not sure the last word, but that'd be my guess.
Okay, right. Yeah, that's pretty close. So the government announces a series of economic reforms to stimulate growth. Word for word, it's the government announces a series of reforms economic to stimulate the growth. This word, croissance, was the one keyword that was hard for the participants to guess, but it is related to a word they know.
The government announced a series of economic reforms to stimulate. I forgot what croix means. Yeah, probably not croissants. Probably not a pastry.
Oh, okay, right, interesting. Yeah, before we saw the word croix, which meant like think or believe. This word is actually a different word. And interestingly, it's actually related to the word you said after that, like croissant. So I'll show you the sentence here. The government announces a series of economic reforms to stimulate growth. So the croissance is growth, but the word croissant, the bread, is like a bread that grows, gets up puffy and gets bigger when you put it in the oven. So it's related to the verb for grow.
Cool.
Okay, another one. Les experts mettent en garde contre les conséquences graves du changement climatique sur la biodiversité.
Well, from les conséquences, that's like the grave consequences of climate change on biodiversity. It's going to be that last section. And the start is like the experts. Kind of looks like they're like on on guard. Guard obviously reminds me of like being defensive or being ready to like fight for something. And then midterm, I don't know what that is.
Okay, so here's the sentence. Experts warn against the serious consequences of climate change on biodiversity. Word for word, it's the experts warn against the consequences, serious or grave, of change climatic on the biodiversity. Let's have a look at this verb phrase here. Met en garde. Met en garde is like warn. Met means put. So it's like put people on guard. So that phrase together means to warn. And then contre means against. So you probably heard like words related to that in English, right? Like contrary or things like that, which means like in opposition to. It was interesting to observe how the participants first looked for words they recognized and then tried to put them together in a way that made sense.
I have the words, but let me arrange them in the right order.
Okay.
Experts warn of grave consequences on biodiversity due to climate change. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, right. That sounds pretty close. It was interesting how you sort of arranged the words yourself in your head. Like you picked out the words you recognize, but then the syntax didn't really make sense. So you provided the syntax yourself and sort of arranged the words to create the meaning. That was interesting. Okay. Les autorités sanitaires recommandent la vaccination pour lutter contre l'épidémie de grippe saisonnière.
The authorities, the health authorities, that's going to be my guess, or the health system, or like sanitaires, I'm going to guess is health, but for us it's like sanitary. Recommend the vaccination for something against, see that contra again, it's like against. Epidemic looks like epidemic or sickness, some sort of illness. I don't know what those last two words are, maybe like it's hold on, I don't know, grip, I see grip, I don't know about the other one though.
Okay. The last one will make sense in context when you see it, I think. So here's the sentence. Health authorities recommend vaccination to combat the seasonal flu epidemic. Word for word, it's the authorities' health recommend the vaccination to fight against the epidemic of flu seasonal. Most of the keywords here seem to be recognizable to the participants, but the word for flu, grippe, posed a challenge, and to some extent the word for seasonal, saisonnière.
Cautiously, I would translate the last one as season. Sounds like season. So like reducing the strength of the epidemic in this period, like something like that.
Okay, so here's the sentence. Health authorities recommend vaccination to combat the seasonal flu epidemic. Okay, another one. Une nouvelle étude révèle une augmentation significative de la pauvreté chez les jeunes adultes.
So I'm thinking the first word would be like a novel. The last word is, I'm guessing, is young adult, so probably something to do with a young adult novel. And then something about it being significant or like an important young adult novel. I don't really understand like the whole context of the sentence, just like those basic parts.
Okay, right. So the first part, like nouvelle, actually means new as an adjective. So the sentence would be like this. A new study reveals a significant increase in poverty among young adults. Word for word, a new study reveals an increase significant of the poverty among the young adults. This word, augmentation, is the source of the English word augmentation.
Augmentation is like in music. If you augment the fifth, you raise the fifth. So I guess that makes sense.
This word, jeune, is related to the English word junior, but I'd never thought about it until one of the participants brought it up.
Oh, I see. So like June as in like junior. Is that a...
Yeah, interesting. That's a good question. It looks like they're related, but the English word came from Latin. Both words came from Latin, juvenis. The English word junior comes from the comparative form in Latin, junior. I can't say I was too surprised by the results of this experiment. When it came to formal sentences, the participants were able to make a good educated guess as to the meaning, even though some of the words were still unclear. But informal sentences were much harder to figure out, because fewer of those words were adopted into English. As I briefly mentioned in the introduction, Norman French became the language of law, administration, and the upper classes, while the common people spoke English. So French vocabulary naturally flowed into formal and elevated English more than it did to informal English. So the French vocabulary in English doesn't make it really easy to learn conversational French, especially when you consider how differently the loanwords are pronounced. It does help to some extent, and it helps you build vocabulary and reading skills beyond everyday conversation. But when it comes to the everyday basics, you'll have to learn a lot of the vocabulary from scratch. And even for familiar vocabulary, you'll have to learn the French pronunciation. But hey, that's half the fun. If you're a native speaker of English, how well can you read written French? And if you have some previous exposure to French or another Romance language, how much do you think that helps? And to French speakers, how much did the French vocabulary in English help you when you were first learning it? And now it's time to give a shout out to the Langfocus Patreon supporters, especially these ones right here whose names are on the screen. They're the top tier Patreon supporters, so let's give them a round of applause. If you enjoyed this video, then I bet you'll enjoy this one too. Click on the thumbnail to check it out.